I know for me, when I watch the news or I hear anything about this side versus that side, this bill, I feel like I don't know if I can hold a conversation, if I'm intellectual enough to talk about it. When it pertains to activism, you gotta believe in what you're feeling. You have to want it, which means you have to act on it. But I think at the end of the day, when you take all those words out, we all have the same goal. We want everything to be better. There are some people that don't, and we have to look out for that. But at the end of the day, it starts with activism. When you hear the word activist, tell me what comes to mind?
I think about organizing, I think about grassroots, I think about people.
A lot of people want to feel as agitate, but what it means to me is that you penetrate change.
Fighter.
Fighter.
Someone who's going to stand up for what they feel is right.
When I hear the word activist, I think of action. I think of a verb. It's something we do. It's something that I am. It's a word that I now own and take ownership of proudly. When I heard it when I was younger, I was probably intimidated by it or not even really knowing, fully understanding the definition of it. But now I've come into my own and I realize that's probably my #1 title, next to being a mom.
Action.
Okay.
Action. An activist doesn't only talk about what they think should happen in the community or for a specific community, but they go into actual work. They do physical work in making those things come true.
Mm-hmm.
I would consider myself an activist, but there's a lot of categories when you talk about activists. You talk about advocate, you talk about community organizer, you talk about a person that deals with human rights.
Talk to us about how social media affects activism and how it is viewed.
You know, as generations go, we find new tactics and ways of how we organize and mobilize our communities. And we live in this generation where social media and the internet is a tool in the toolbox, as we call it, to this work.
So for the good, raising awareness around how much there are people out here who care, right? Because even if you're an activist that just kind of just talk, but you ain't really doing nothing, at least you care to speak something positive, to talk about something else outside of, you know, promoting the negativity and, you know, posting the fights.
It's easy to make something look like it is what it's not,
Right.
if that makes sense. And a lot of people use social media to that effect. Personally, I've actually not posted as much of my activity or my mentorship or my impact because I feel that so many people are being fraudulent. There's this virtual fraudulence out there.
Right.
So I can't say it's actually impacting me negatively because I'm not putting the positivity out there that I am a part of.
The bad part is where some of the activism promotes, you know, the negative, the violence, right? Because it's like, yo, these shootings is happening right here, but for the most part, you're not telling people to do better. You're promoting that violence.
Right.
You know, I can't believe such and such choked this person out, and you put that video up. You just promoted the violence. You didn't promote the result. You didn't promote the solution at all. And so it's like, it's that, and then it's the over-information and misinformation that comes with it. Sometimes activism can be confused with clout chasing. And in clout chasing, you may add some more mumbo sauce onto the fries that don't need to be on there. You know what I'm saying? For lack of better analogy, it's a pretty good analogy.
It's a good analogy. All right. Kind of a controversial question. Should activists get paid?
Activists should absolutely get paid.
If you ask me, why certainly.
I absolutely feel that all activists should be paid because it takes courage.
The bare minimum is they'll go out and whatever they get, as far as a small grant, probably $5,000 or $10,000, they'll put it into one outing. So now they're back at square one.
I think a lot of activists have come into their work, unfortunately, because something has happened in their life that was systematic or structural, or just a gap, whether it be education or poor economic opportunity, gun violence, it could be monkeypox. But I think we find a cause, we give our all and our heart to it, and I think that there is a way to monetize that. But I think that our country should become more creative in helping us find ways to monetize it. Because if we don't have a product, if it's just giving our time or our presence, and you're not famous, you're almost struggling for a living.
And I don't think it should be the responsibility of the system. I think our community in a whole should take care of the activists.
We need people, we need followers behind us, we need people spreading our messages, we need volunteers, we need people to tell us to stop, we need accountability partners, we need people to keep us balanced, but we need money. Yeah. We need to earn a living so that we can continue doing the cause, because there's so many gaps and harms and traumas everywhere that you need as many activists as there are creating, you know, that bridge to support. And we need our country, we need our government, we need philanthropists just to be more creative and understanding and helping support financially activists in doing what they're doing. And there are some incubator programs and people starting that, because I'm always optimistic, but in reality, you're looking at someone whose face is on posters around the city, but I live below minimum wage, you know. I don't have the life that I want for my family, for myself, for my youth and my program, but I'm constantly giving and constantly showing up and constantly supporting, because the hurt and the trauma doesn't stop.
Right. And that's the other thing about true activism. We have raped our community so much by people misunderstanding why they're supposed to be educated, why they're supposed to be intellectual, is to build up and to build people up. So when you talk about that particular thing, I am saying that the payment should come from the people, from the community, because activism, very seldom, people are going to pay you to tell the truth. And that's serious.
I would say, what do you feel like for you is something that your number one thing, like this is what I want to address?
Man, these kids.
Yeah, I first believe that opportunities create community safety.
Something that I think I was born to do, called to do, I live to do is in gun violence. I'm aiming to prevent gun violence with my voice, with my action. And I'm hoping to spread peace and stop the spread of gun violence as a disease.
Well, I think we see people get stuck in situations where they have to provide for their families in some shape or form, and sometimes that ends in violence.
There are neighborhoods where children are dying weekly, right, and monthly. We look at those neighborhoods and then we go into them and find out what's missing. And most of the time, it's going to, man, it sounds cliche, most of the time it's the playground missing. Mm-hmm. Or they at the playground, the drug dealers or the gangbangers or whatever you want to call them, they at the playground.
Right.
You know, the recreation centers, we ain't do all this fighting to get a recreation center in this neighborhood for y'all to shoot dice out front the joint.
Right.
You know?
All right. One issue that we do want to discuss today is the optics of selective outrage or activism when it comes to certain issues, such as black-on-black crime versus police killing unarmed people of color. Is it hard as an activist to get behind or support a certain issue?
It's definitely hard to get behind certain issues because if somebody actually funding you and they may be against something else, that's going to clash.
I think we definitely approach those issues differently. There are two different issues if we talk about it. Every community has their own, as we look at numbers, will be, you know, high amongst each other. But when we talk about the fight for our lives, when we talk about Black Lives Matter, we're talking about a systemic oppression that our people have faced. And this is an ongoing fight and struggle that we continue to fight. So when we say Black Lives Matter, we're talking about, as I said, the advancement and the full liberation of our people. And so I see them as two separate movements. I do believe community safety is important within our communities, but I think that's something that we address within our community. But when we talk about the holistic movement, we're talking about the full liberation of Black people from oppression and white supremacy in this country.
You do have to be selective, especially when you have a lot of followers and there is some accountability. But you have to just know your values, know what you stand by, be ready for the criticism, be open to it. It may grow you, and just stay in, stay
centered,
stay
within
centered,
oneself.
Stay within oneself. Those are the exact words.
It's never hard for a true, authentic, real activist. There's not supposed to be any fear in activists. That's why it's called activist. You're a mover, you're a shaker. That's why I say activist. So that's the problem. We can't even begin to define activists, because if you walk down the street and if you see something wrong, you're supposed to do something about it. Now, if you're fearful, well, then you're not an activist, because an activist is fearless. And so when you talk about activism, if you talk about, like, can they get behind a certain issue or a certain cause, I always advise, whatever you get behind, believe in it, feel it, want it, and go beyond yourself. Because a lot of things that we do, we don't do for others, we do for ourselves. Because we want that pat on the back, or we want to hear our names echoed, or we want to be in photo ops. But in each thing, in each situation, it should be the purpose of change and making people's lives better.
So for you, what keeps you going? What's your motivation?
Yeah, I think of the words of late Congressman Elijah Cummings, who would say, "We're fighting for generations yet unborn." And so I think when I think about that, I think about my children's children. I think back to what will the history books say about me? Will they say that I stood by, or will they say that I stood up and used my voice to speak truth to power?
I need all the parents to hear me and hear me clearly. It can't just be about your kids. You can't teach your kids how to be upstanding citizens and you not checking so-and-so that's outside, because your kids got to go out there.
Right.
And so either you not equipping them to be able to survive in this community, or you not helping the community, period, by just ignoring somebody else's kids. And it's go back to the parents. Y'all gotta stop. We gotta stop. Because I be saying y'all don't want to talk at nobody. We have to stop being so gung-ho around what somebody said to our kids. You know, the older people before us said, man, if your mama whooped you, if the neighbor had to say something to you, your mama whooped you, the neighbor might have whooped you, your uncle will come over and whoop you. And I ain't talking about abuse, I'm talking about the discipline part of everybody being accountable.
Right.
We can't hold the kids accountable no more, because the parent gonna pull up, I gotta wreck the parent.
Right.
So now we are totally showing them the lack of unity right there in their face.
Right.
And now they like, well, I'm good.
I don't like to see people suffer. I don't like to see people unhappy. I don't like to see people lie to people. And the most amazing thing about Parent Watch and all the organizations I ever started, it has always been about protecting people that are abused, that are used, that are constantly utilized for surveys, data. If you go out and sit at a table and read maybe 5 to 10 proposals, every last proposal is capitalizing off of people's disparity or a problem or something they trying to prove that is wrong. And if you stop and think about it, that's another subject that should be activated. Funders keep paying organizations to identify problems but won't give them the money to solve the problems.
Berry Farm is the first black home ownership community in the United States of America. The business deal between the Berry family and the United States government, part of the funds were allocated to create Howard University. In 1867, 1 out of 4 students, or 1 out of 4 youth who lived in Berry Farm were students at Howard University. While y'all rebuilding the joint, the people in Parkchester and in the surrounding neighborhoods need a chance to move in. Not just the people that moved out that y'all saying y'all want to move back in, because y'all really not showing us how y'all pointing that out, how y'all gonna get them back in there. Before y'all tear Parkchester down, everybody in there need to be able to get into the new buildings that y'all putting up.
Right.
Also, the graduating seniors that move into that community after it's built up need to have automatic scholarships to Howard University. The 40,000 square feet of retail need to have more than enough black-owned businesses as a part of it. The money that y'all gonna put into the neighborhood that you wanna spend on whatever trinkets, that need to go to the Berry Farm Beavers. They don't need to have no more fundraisers, okay? The community center that we got right there is beautiful and we're grateful for it, but it ain't a whole lot of programming in there. We need money put towards the programming. The seniors that live in Parkchester, they need to be in that senior citizen building at Asbury. And the link to apply to build that first building at Asbury in Berry Farms, the jobs for that, the link to the jobs for that needs to be magnified. It shouldn't just be me texting around to the homies. We need all our community leaders, especially the Ward 8 ones, to put that on blast and tell them Paul said it. And I don't want to be, I know they'll see this eventually, but this is not a clout thing. We need this because this was a community that was open for us to thrive. And we know the vices that got thrown in there when lives was lost. And lives are still being lost in that community. Right. There are fatherless children in that community. You feel me? Those children need to, if they stand in that community, they need to grow up in that community with opportunities to be better people. Right. That's what I'm saying. That's my message. I'm talking about Berry Farm.
You heard it. From who?
Just Paul.
Period.
I'm not your boyfriend, I'm your oi friend.
Ow.
Oi.
Oi. I love you. That's a wrap. That was good.